Highlights of the annual Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day are proudly brought to you by Toyota South Africa Motors in association with the Four-Wheel Drive Club of Southern Africa, Western Cape. If you are familiar with the works of Plato, you'll know where the name Atlantis comes from. But here in the Western Cape, the name is synonymous with a small town some 50 kilometers to the north of the mother city, with a pristine dune field on its borders. These are the famous Atlantis Dunes, which are carefully protected by the city of Cape Town. Yet once a year, with very specific permits and permissions in place, the dunes are transformed for the annual Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day, and 2023 was no different. Toyota has been the headline sponsor of the Atlantis 4x4 Family Fun Day for 15 editions of the event, and South Africa's biggest manufacturer is as committed to the Fun Day as ever for a variety of reasons. We caught up with Toyota SA Motors' Mzolisi Witboy on the side of a windswept dune at Atlantis, and he gave us some more insight.
This is one of those very rare opportunities where we get to interact with our customers. And we also get a first-hand experience of how they use the products that we manufacture as an automotive company. What's also interesting is that we get to see a lot of products and various things that people have done to their cars to make sure that they can be competitive in these conditions. So it's quite encouraging for Toyota to see that the 4x4s that people buy are put into use. You get a lot of people buy 4x4s and they never really experience they never really put them into test. So we like this event for that purpose. Thank you.
This year, the Cape Doctor was a rather unkind and uninvited guest at the event, whipping the dunes into a frenzy and making it hard for anyone not inside a car to fully enjoy the event. Even so, the Four-Wheel Drive Club of Southern Africa, Western Cape, put their best foot forward as scores of marshals, assistants, recovery specialists and scorers were deployed to make sure that everything went as planned. There were also food trucks, toilets and a massive tent set up as HQ for the event, all the components needed to host the Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day. And with the wind already in attendance, there was no doubt that no tracks would remain after the event, in this case, in a matter of hours. But we're getting ahead of the story here. Let's backtrack to early on the morning of 7 October 2023, when more than 70 four-wheel drive enthusiasts and their families arrived at Atlantis Dunes. Here, City of Cape Town officials were on hand to make sure that no alcohol was taken into the reservation area. The no alcohol rule is strictly enforced for all visitors to the area, but for the competitors, there were more pressing concerns. Firstly, each competitor had to register at the entrance, at which point they received an identifying sticker to put on the windscreen of their vehicle. With so many competitors taking part, registration could have been a nightmare, but the well-practiced members of the club made fast work of the process. Next up was an opportunity to deflate the tires on all the cars entering the dunes to the appropriate pressures. This varies for the different types of tires, but most competitors opted to run their pressures around the 0.8 bar mark, spot on for standard tires in the soft white sand. From there, it was time to head into the dunes. Once inside the protected area, competitive vehicles were lined up in chutes, forming queues of up to 10 vehicles, which would be traveling together throughout the day with a group leader moving the mini convoy from one obstacle to the next in a predetermined order. As ever, the day was extremely well run and started with a detailed briefing to all participants. Safety is always a main concern for the Four-Wheel Drive Club of Southern Africa Western Cape, and this year would be no exception. The club's Charles Kruger laid down the law in a firm but entertaining manner and also explained how the day would work in broad strokes. He also reiterated that the emphasis is on fun, but that scoring would take place with the aim of identifying a winner in the end. And with that, it was time for the competitors to board their steeds, fire up the engines and prepare to tackle the dunes. But what exactly is the Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day and what do competitors have to face? Well, here's a quick overview. The overall course consists of 8 different obstacles known as tasks. This year, all of the tasks had a time limit of 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which helped to keep the action flowing throughout the day. Some tasks included a regularity element, where crews had to aim to complete the task within a predetermined time span. And it wasn't always just about the car's off-road abilities and the driver's skills either, as many of the tasks also included an additional challenge of some sorts for either the co-driver, the driver, or both. As such, there were puzzles to complete, items to memorize, balls to throw, and even kitties to shoot. A true mixed bag that kept everyone involved and everyone on their toes.
Well, correct. Toyota's been our mainline sponsor since the inception, and they've stuck it out all the years. And obviously, without a sponsor like Toyota, we couldn't present it on this format. There are other sponsors, people from the 4x4 community that come along and sponsor some of the obstacles, as you would have seen, as you moved around today. And then also, it's not just for Toyotas to partake. Anybody with any vehicle can come and compete.
With all the preparations, driver's briefing and other formalities done and dusted, it was time for the more than 70 cars and crews to head out to the respective tasks. The area is fairly contained, with the tasks in relatively close proximity to each other, and the early morning start meant it was still relatively cool in the Cape. The sun beating down on the white sands can be both blinding and punishing, but this year's Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day was blessed with mercifully mild weather. And were it not for the incessant wind, the weather may have been simply superb. As it turned out, the wind didn't die down even for a moment during the day, but that hardly dampened anyone's spirits. Let's take a look at the action, starting at Task 1. This one was fairly straightforward. In reality, the task, sponsored by the Burnco 4-wheel drive club, required skill and planning, but also a bit of confidence. By selecting the easiest option, a competitor could only score 30 points, whereas a full marks finish would net them 50. But if you don't make it to the top, you leave with nothing. So we already know that bigger wheels that are deflated to the correct pressures are your friends when it comes to sand and dune driving. But they are not the only ones on your side, especially when it comes to driving uphill, as with the big dune here at the Dune Charge. This is where a heavy right foot, backed by plenty of horses under the bonnet, come in extremely handy. Add to that the sand that was properly churned up by each group, and it quickly becomes clear that a full mark score isn't that easy to achieve. With that said, the day was organized in such a way that each of the groups would be the first to tackle a task, as the groups rotated in a set order, giving everyone a fair shot throughout the day. Next up was Task 2, Figure of 8, which was supported by Camp Cover. This one was an interesting one, as the marshal on duty explained.
Obstacle 2, it's sponsored by Camp Cover, and it's a figure of 8 timed obstacle. So you've got it's a speed test through the obstacle, with the co-driver having an event of having to throw the balls through a tire.
By adding the throwing of balls to the equation, the figure of 8 task brought another element to the mix. With that said, the whipping wind made the throwing of balls almost impossible, and many competitors opted to simply fling them and fight on. As for the rest of the task, it was a tricky little route with a tight course and lots of loose sand. But the competitors seemed to enjoy themselves tremendously, and so the day marched on.
We both are involved. It's a lot of fun for him and me as well. The vehicles are really impressing us. We didn't know their capabilities before today. Really enjoying it.
The Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day was shaping up to be a cracking affair, with more than 70 4x4 vehicles filled with off-road enthusiasts spread out across the Atlantis conservation area. Join us after the break for more action from the spectacular White Dunes. Welcome back to the beautiful white sand dunes of Atlantis, where the Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day was now in full swing. The mercury was rising, which meant the sand got looser and softer as the day went on, and completing an obstacle or task was becoming more of a challenge. The never-ending wind also played its part, though the drivers and passengers inside their cars probably didn't notice that much. So off to task 3, Up and Over as it was known, was sponsored by Market Toyota and featured a regularity element that demanded precision timing in order to score maximum points.
Obstacle number 3 basically is an up and down. It's quite steep incline. Decline is not as bad, but it's quite sharp bend on the top. So the guys are stuck on the bottom part, don't have any momentum.
Getting the timing right was certainly a tough challenge for many of the competitors, and sometimes it was necessary to stop just before the finish line. But between the start and the finish, there were some tough sections to deal with, which made it difficult to gauge just how far you were ahead or behind the target time. For some competitors, it came naturally, while others had to rely on their co-drivers to help them get it just right.
Number 4, drag race, fastest time, up, over, reverse, down, back, reverse, through. The left poles on the left-hand side must be red, reverse, stop, time. Put some threads on.
This one was called The Drag, and it featured a rather complicated course requiring a lot of pinpoint reversing. Not only that, but the passenger had something to keep him or her busy too. While the driver was negotiating the course, the co-driver had to match a number of nuts and bolts and screw them together. The catch? The nuts and bolts were separated in a box with a series of holes in the divider. This meant that accuracy and quick thinking was required by both the driver and the person sitting next to him. Oh, and this task was sponsored by Ironman and Cooper.
Did you win it today?
And this is not your first time?
No,
And why do you keep coming back?
because it's nice. We like it.
The next task was sponsored by Terrain Tamer, and it had another task for the co-driver to complete.
This is obstacle 5, roller coaster. It's all about speed. When they stop, the co-pilot gets out, get 5 shots with the marble, see how many hits they can get. They get back into the car. Once the safety belt's in, the guy can take off, and it's then all about speed until they stop on the side.
Clearly not everyone grew up shooting targets with a Ketty. But then again, the windy conditions certainly didn't help. In the end, it was a balance between spending too much time trying to hit the target or getting back in the car and completing the task as quickly as possible. A couple of hits would go a long way towards banking some points, but missing the target meant time lost for no reward. The route itself was winding, but not particularly taxing, and the drivers, with a bit of skill, made it look easy enough. And so, despite the whipping wind, the day marched on.
Yeah, it's been exciting. My first time doing something like this. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Welcome to the roller coaster, as Task 6 was known. Well, that sounds easy enough, but memorizing a bunch of random items under pressure is never that easy. Doing so and then attempting to retain those memories while the driver went ballistic on the challenging and bumpy route, well, that's a different prospect altogether. Roller coaster was sponsored by Tiger Wheel and Tire, and it proved the undoing of many a crew. As with some of the other tasks, it wasn't all about testing the driver. This time it was the entire crew who had to do their bit. And then there was the time factor too. Completing the course as quickly as possible yielded maximum points and helped to reduce the amount of time that the memorized items had to be stored in the brain. But it also made it much easier to snag a flagpole or two, dropping points in the process.
Gashoedpennetjie, bousakkel, fuse, sonbril, telefoon, spark plug.
Go Mad 4x4 Fitment Center brought us Task 7, And if you aren't good at reversing, especially in sandy conditions, this one was definitely not the place for you.
This is obstacle number 7. Basically, they need to go up, park the vehicle at the top, do a full reverse, park it back in another garage. From that garage, you do a loop turns, coming out, and it's all being done at time.
And if that sounded a bit confusing, trust us, it was. In principle, it sounds easy enough. Go forwards along the course into what the organizers called a gate, then reverse along the route again and into another gate, before setting off forward again towards the finish. And add to that a time limit of 2 minutes 30 seconds just to spice things up. Never mind spice it up, this could easily trip you up. But again, the emphasis was on fun, and while task 7 might have been tricky, it was certainly also a lot of fun. In a nod to Eskom, the final task of the day was known as Shed the Load.
They start by doing a little test there with the co-driver, with a little machine there, just to see test their skills, and then they did basically do a figure of 8 as fast as they can basically go.
This one was sponsored by 4x4 Megaworld, and task 8 required the co-driver to pass a ring along an electrified wire without letting the ring touch the wire. Sounds easy enough, but with a bit of adrenaline flowing and plenty of wind blowing, it was a tough task indeed. Each competitor started with a full score of 30 points, but lost 5 points for every time the ring touched the wire. On top of that, the driver had to negotiate a tight and winding course between the flags, with each touch of the flag costing further points. A time limit of 2 minutes 30 seconds made sure that the adrenaline was up as crew after crew tackled Shed the Load. And then, just like that, all the tasks were done. Nearly 80 cars had made their way through the course, testing drivers and marriages alike along the way. But more importantly, there was plenty of laughter throughout the day. There's more to tell, so join us again after the break. As we mentioned earlier, the event was sponsored by Toyota SA, who invited members of the media to experience the thrills and spills of the Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day firsthand from behind the wheel of the latest Toyota Hilux GRS. Oh, and one Hilux legend. The media crews were embroiled in their own mini-battle, but we caught up with them to get their impressions of their steeds, as well as their experiences in the soft sands of Atlantis. Wille Twee Wiele was represented by popular radio personality Jeanette Kok-Kritzinger, who was partnered with Monica de Jager for the day. Kok-Kritzinger is an experienced motoring journalist, but this was her first time competing at Atlantis.
This 2.8 GD6 is absolutely awesome, and all you need to do, lock it in 4 low, put your diff off. You don't even need diff, you just put your ABS off and done. Jy gooi millies. And if you don't understand it, foot plant.
Rob Klaassen and partner Gayleen represented the Wheels 24 family and were also Atlantis rookies. Not that dampened his enthusiasm in the least.
Now, the Fortuner feels planted in the sand compared to the Hilux drivers I've spoken to. So this car feels much more grippy when it comes to those thick sand, that thick embedded sand. So yeah, I'm feeling this car.
More Atlantis newcomers who had an awesome day out. This is Oliver Kiahane and partner Ali Meredith, who competed on behalf of Leisure Wheels.
I think that I've got a lot more wrong than I expected to. It's been lots of fun though. yeah, it's been really cool.
And finally, the ladies from Apex Mag, Van van Staden and partner Cara Peach, who had, dare we say it, a peach of a time. Sorry, we couldn't help it.
GR Hilux, amazing. I think it's handling. The extra kilowatts that we've got is helping. I think so.
With all of the 70 plus teams and cars safely through the course, the shadows were starting to lengthen over the dunes. Contestants, families and friends all gathered at the Bedouin tented HQ to witness the conclusion of the day's proceedings. For many, it was simply about the fun and the joy of participating, while others took it more seriously. But either way, the emphasis of the Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day remained on the word fun. And the prize giving was responsible for most of the fun, thanks to a variety of sponsors putting up a great selection of prizes, where most teams were richly rewarded for placing their machine and their marriage in the firing line for 10 or so hours. When the white sands had finally settled, Charles Kruger from the 4-Wheel Drive Club of South Africa's Western Cape Division could announce the winners. As we've said before, the emphasis at Atlantis is firmly on fun. And as such, most of the prizes were distributed through a lucky draw. But even so, there was always going to be one crew who managed to get everything right in all the right places. When all the scores were tallied, the overall victory went to none other than Dino and Megan Burnett in the Land Rover Discovery, and not for the first time either. Dino is no stranger to the winner's circle in Atlantis, having chalked up more than a few victories in his time. Even so, adding another win was more than enough reason to smile.
Thank you very much. Very nice one. Very well organized as usual. Very nice obstacles. We really enjoyed ourselves today. It's a very nice event. I like the event. Been doing it since 97, 98. I think I missed 2 years when my wife drove, for I co-navigated for her, and from there on I've been driving everyone. But it's a very nice event. We enjoy it thoroughly.
And that was that for the 2023 edition of the Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day in the Dunes, where family and friends enjoyed the pleasures of 4x4 and off-road driving, all courtesy of sponsors Toyota. We hope to see you all again in 2024 as we sign off with some final words from Charles Kruger.
Man, great event, successful again. Obviously the weather today didn't really play along with this wind, but I think it made it interesting for the competitors. Kept everyone inside the tent and inside their cars. But yeah, I think it was a good event, successful again. Yeah, we're very happy. The size of the field was a little bit bigger than last year. Last year we had 76, this year we had 82 entries. So as you know, as we always will close the competition at 100. So 80 was good, we're happy with that. Makes it manageable.
Highlights of the annual Toyota Atlantis 4x4 Fun Day are proudly brought to you by Toyota South Africa Motors in association with the 4-Wheel Drive Club of Southern Africa, Western Cape.